Dr. Lister is a registered dietitian with an undergraduate degree in nutrition from the University of Saskatchewan, a master's degree in health leadership from Athabasca University, Alberta, master's degree in clinical nutrition from Rutgers University in Newark, New York, and a doctorate degree in clinical nutrition and integrative health from the Maryland University in Baltimore. She utilizes nutrition, natural health remedies, and lifestyle interventions to overcome unwanted symptoms to manage disease with clients in her private practice on Vancouver Island. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Lister.
Hi,
Over to you.
everyone. Today, I'm going to focus on detoxification for Parkinson's disease that involves the liver, the gut, and the brain. And from here on in, I will refer to Parkinson's disease as PD. It just makes it a little easier. When we talk about detoxification for PD, we are referring to metabolic detoxification, not substance abuse detox. Detoxification is not something that comes from a box, but it's our body's way of processing and eliminating toxins to avoid toxic burden and damage to the body. Metabolic detoxification involves the gut, the liver, and it influences the brain. We will be discussing natural detoxification and unpacking this diagram. Building my knowledge on PD started in the doctoral program, where I learned that lifestyle factors affect the brain. I learned that toxic burden contributes to PD and that we can support detoxification. That led me to wonder if we could actually create an intervention for PD utilizing nutrition and lifestyle changes in detoxification. So in 2019, for my doctoral project, I did a literature search and I found over 6,000 research articles related to PD and lifestyle. I read the research articles and assessed those that looked suitable, utilizing a systematic approach developed by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. This reduced the list of articles to the highest quality research available, and then I wrote a review of the information and developed a nutrition and lifestyle intervention. The short version of the evidence was published in the Journal of Movement Disorders in 2020. In 2022, the World Health Organization identified PD as the fastest growing neurological disease and published a technical report outlining the global burden and the gaps in knowledge and practice critical for reducing PD. The report suggested policies for banning pesticides, herbicides, chemicals, such as solvents and air pollution, of which enter the body through the lungs, the gut, and the skin, and affecting the brain. Although some of this work has started, it will take generations to see significant changes. But in the meantime, there are mechanisms that we can use to protect ourselves from developing PD or slow the progression. Genetics only increases the risk by 10%. Toxic burden is thought to be the largest contributor to PD. The disease can be triggered by environmental toxins, in which food is the #1 source, but also medications, disorders of the brain, and infections, particularly in the gut. The mediators, or factors that could increase the progression of the disease, include a poor functioning detoxification system and abnormalities in the gut. And we are going to review these abnormalities in more detail. Researchers have begun studying the impact of lifestyle on the development and the progression of PD. They have found that 60% of people with PD are malnourished due to inadequate intakes of vitamins, minerals, and protein. It is important to note that malnourished people can be of normal weight or obese, and not necessarily thin as we think. A study of dietary habits of people with PD in the United States show that they consume less protein, fiber, fat, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Antioxidants including vitamins C, E, and copper, and they prevent damage to the nervous system and the brain. Toxicity may be the cause, but malnutrition is definitely a contributor. The study we just talked about in the last slide showed that a good proportion of people with PD have suboptimal diets. But does changing dietary habits impact PD? Well, the answer is yes. A meta-analysis of systematic reviews, which is the best type of research that we have, showed that diet interventions have a positive effect on motor and non-motor symptoms in PD. So back to this diagram. What we eat has an impact on the gut, the liver, and the brain. And we need to understand these systems to understand how food influences PD. If you look at the bottom of the diagram, that shows a side cut of the gut and its microbiome. The microbiome is the collection or collective term we use for the intestinal bacteria, which is a collection of trillions of microorganisms that includes bacteria, viruses, fungi, and protozoa. This microbial community contributes to digestion and production of essential nutrients. It also either contributes to or protects us from diseases. It has a profound effect on the brain and functions as part of our immunity. The microbiome in the gut lumen is separated from the blood by the intestinal wall, allowing nutrients to pass through. The blood flows through the portal vein to the liver and from there to the brain. The gut is connected to the brain by the vagal nerve. This relationship is how the gut and the liver are connected to the development and the progression of PD. So let's start with the gut. And it is part of our detoxification system. It is the tube that runs from your gums to your bum and houses our microbiome. It is very susceptible to disruptions, which may be the root cause of many diseases. An example of a disruption is constipation. Many sources of research say that constipation starts about 15 to 20 years before we notice any other signs and symptoms of PD. As many diseases start in the gut, perhaps the presence of constipation is an early sign. A closer look at the gut microbiome shows that it's a collection of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and protozoa. Some of these microbes are considered bad, but they are kept under control by the good microbes. Each area of the gut, the mouth, the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine, has its own unique microbiome. And when these microbes live in harmony, they promote good health. Each person has their own signature microbiome that is influenced by our diet, our lifestyle, and our environment. Each type of microbe has its own food preference. Therefore, the saying, "You are what you eat," is true. Healthy food allows the natural microbiome to thrive, but processed foods, sugar, additives, preservatives, pesticides, and herbicides cause the bad microbes to thrive, disrupting the balance of the microbiome. Stress, lack of sleep, inactivity also play a role in this disruption. So the key message is that diet, lifestyle, and our environment can disrupt the microbiome. And what affects the gut affects the brain and leads to the progression of PD. Research shows us that people with PD have a disrupted microbiome. Even though our microbiome is very individual, they are noticing some commonality among people with PD. That is to say, some species, we have too much of some species and not enough of others. People with PD are showing too much of these top 4 bacteria that are shown here. They are Akkermansia, Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus, and Enterobacteriaceae. The first 3 listed these are very healthy bacteria. We want to have them. But even healthy bacteria, if they become overgrown, they start causing disruptions. Remember, this needs to be a balance. The Enterobacteria, the 4th one on that list, they actually produce something called a lipopolysaccharide, which is a toxin that damages the gut lining and causes inflammation. This toxin, along with inflammation, can damage the blood-brain barrier. That is the barrier in the brain that protects it from everything outside of the brain. These bottom 4 types of bacteria, they're the ones that influence good health, and they are in short supply. As you can see, there's a less in people with PD than what should be there. They are not producing enough of these short-chain fatty acids and mucins that protect the gut as well as the blood-brain barrier. Probiotics usually consist of bifidobacterium and lactobacillus, which we don't want more of for people with PD. Therefore, because we already have too many, and that's an unusual situation. Most people don't have enough, but in this case, people with PD have too many. The ones we need in this scenario, the ones on the right-hand side of the screen, are not found in probiotics. But even if they were, even the good bacteria, if they become overgrown, they cause this disruption, an imbalance. So for the time being, the best way to balance our microbiome is with food. Maybe in the future, the research will show us how to use probiotics in disease, but right now we're not there. A study published this year showed that a disrupted microbiome to the point of causing infections had an impact on PD. The infection, Helicobacter pylori, also known as H. pylori, increases the severity of PD symptoms. And when it was treated with antibiotics, we also saw improvements in PD symptoms and levodopa absorption. An issue with levodopa is the poor absorption rate, which we'll discuss in a bit. Another infection known to impact PD is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, known as SIBO. And it causes gut issues like diarrhea or constipation, bloating, excess gas, pain, and nutritional deficiencies. People with H. pylori, whether that's in the past or if that's present, tend to have the SIBO, the small bacterial overgrowth, or SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. And when either one of these are treated, symptoms of PD improved. Here's another way to look at the effects of the disrupted microbiome on the gut. The cells in the gut lining are normally tight with receptors that regulate what flows between the blood and the gut. When it is damaged by toxins produced by microbial overgrowth, it leaks, which we call increased intestinal permeability, or leaky gut for short. Leaky gut allows toxins, viruses, bacteria, and fungi to pass through the lumen of the gut into the bloodstream. When that happens, it activates the immune system. And now we have an immune system that's running 24/7. So we call that low-grade immune activation and low-grade inflammation. And this is what we believe is the cause or the root cause of most disease, or at least a contributor. The blood full of toxins travels through the liver to be cleansed. If the detoxification system is not working optimally, the blood with the toxins, it goes to the brain. And if the blood-brain barrier is damaged, the toxins enter the brain. And this is how we believe that toxins may be a cause or a contributor to PD. Now onto the vagus nerve. This is what connects the gut and the brain. Bacteria in the gut create what we call neurotransmitters. They're communication signals, and they travel between the gut and the brain and the brain and the gut. When the microbiome is disrupted, the bacterial overgrowth changes these neurotransmitters, and they become nasty communication messages, which may cause symptoms such as depression and anxiety. And they also damage the blood-brain barrier. Next in the diagram is the liver. The function of the liver is to clean the blood of toxins. Leaky gut causes an increase in the amount of toxins entering the bloodstream that burdens the liver and slows down detoxification. Liver detoxification is complicated and requires many nutrients. This is a diagram of the liver showing the phases of detoxification and the nutrients required for each phase. There are 3 phases and 1 intermediate phase. Phase 1 tends to be faster than phase 2. That slows down the entire process. Without all of these nutrients listed, the liver is not efficiently clearing toxins from the blood. So let's talk about each one of these phases. Phase 1 detoxification uses nutrients to convert the fat-soluble toxins into their water-soluble forms. And we need B vitamins from beef, chicken, seafood, soy, nuts, seeds, and some vegetables. Even a healthy microbiome creates nutrients essential for detoxification. Flavonoids are nutrients obtained from soy, berries, leche, orange peel, apples, onion, garlic, chia seeds, teas, such as green tea, chamomile, milk thistle, bergamot, and herbs, whether they're dried or fresh, and cocoa. And these all play an important role in detoxification. And we need certain proteins from meat, fish, poultry, and eggs. During the intermediate phase of detoxification, toxins that have been converted to their water-soluble form cause a lot of damage to the body because in their water-soluble forms, they're allowed to float around in the blood and they can go to every organ. And we need antioxidants in order to neutralize these toxins to prevent that damage. Antioxidants generally come from eating colorful vegetables and fruit. We need a wide variety of vegetables for liver detoxification, as well as a healthy microbiome. So think of this as eating the rainbow. Phase 2 detoxification converts these water-soluble toxins into a form that can be excreted. And this phase is slower. So what we need to do is speed it up. And we can speed it up by making sure that we have enough animal proteins, spinach, parsley, sulfur compounds, particularly from cruciferous vegetables, is very, very good, such as arugula, bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, horseradish, cauliflower, kohlrabi, mustard greens, radish, rutabaga, watercress, wasabi, and turnips. So this is what a detoxification diet could look like. And as I mentioned earlier, detoxification is not something that comes in a box, but from the nutrients we eat. Most of what we eat should be vegetables, with the exception of potato and corn, with high quality proteins like fish and chicken, even some beef and pork, a few nuts and seeds, and small amounts of fruit, especially berries and dark chocolate. We should eat much less grains and dairy, as these tend to contribute to our toxic burden. And for beverages, we should consume tea, coffee, and water. Phase 3 detoxification is eliminating the toxins produced by the liver, and this involves the gut. Constipation in PD is common and believed to be due to a slow-moving gut due to the disrupted microbiome. When the gut is damaged or leaky and slow-moving, toxins in the stool can re-enter the bloodstream, increasing that toxic burden on the liver. Leaky gut also causes too much water to be reabsorbed back into the blood, which again also contributes to constipation. The key is to have a healthy microbiome and aim for 1 to 2 regular bowel movements daily that are about type 3 or 4 on the Bristol stool chart. So it's important to treat constipation. And it should be treated with a diet that's high in prebiotics, not probiotics, prebiotics. And this is what feeds the good bacteria. And we find them in vegetables and fermented foods and psyllium husks. We also need physical activity, stress reduction, good sleep, adequate water, as these are important for a healthy gut and treating constipation. Remember we said the vagus nerve communicates between the gut and the brain and the brain and the gut. So if we're under a lot of stress, that's having a negative impact on the gut. Remember, because they talk via the vagus nerve. Highly committed. As a matter of fact, you could say that the gut is our second brain. We also excrete toxins and waste through our kidneys and our skin. To do this, we need adequate water to achieve a light-colored urine. When the urine is light in color, we know we're consuming adequate fluids to excrete toxins from both the kidneys and the gut. Aim for 3 or lower, like 1, 2, or 3 on the urine scale. If you're taking B vitamins, the urine will seem more fluorescent, something like number 4. Sweating is also important as it releases toxins that have been built up in the skin. So we can't forget about our skin. And there's other fluids that we could talk about other than just water. Caffeine has been studied as an alternative for PD since the early 1990s. Foods that have caffeine include tea, coffee, and chocolate. Remember, we've talked about all 3 of them already, right? Consuming caffeine increases natural dopamine and has a protective effect on the brain, as it is an antioxidant. 3 to 4 8-ounce servings daily, about 400 milligrams of caffeine, may improve motor skills, but may have a negative effect on sleep. So consume coffee and tea prior to levodopa, because it may actually enhance the effects of levodopa, but not more than 4 hours before going to sleep, because sleep is just as important. Green tea has EGCG, which is an antioxidant, which improves brain health and prevents dopamine breakdown when consumed as 3 cups with 550 milligrams of EGCG. Post-mortem studies of the brain show people with PD have a high level of oxidative stress that degrades brain tissues. This is confirmation of how important it is to have a lot of antioxidants in our diet. Hibiscus tea has something called hibiscin, which is also an antioxidant. So hibiscus tea, those of you that know your flowers, hibiscus is a flower. It has been shown to improve slowness when starting to move if consumed in doses of 10 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. That's pretty high. It is available as supplements and as a tea. Now, somebody who's taking supplements at a fairly high dose, you need to be aware that it could really lower your blood pressure. So people who have high blood pressure that start taking hibiscus as a supplement need to be aware of this and monitor their blood pressure, because they're going to have to reduce their blood pressure medication. And I've actually used hibiscus to lower blood pressure in my clients for people who don't want to be medicated. It's really quite effective, but could also be dangerous if you're not aware. Once we have corrected the microbiome, we've healed the gut, and we've enhanced detoxification, we can start working on the brain. Neuroplasticity and neuroregeneration means that the blood-brain barrier can be repaired, and we can influence neurotransmitters and perhaps even rebuild the brain. Food plays a major role in brain regeneration. Fats are the building blocks for the brain. The brain needs a variety of fats, including omega-3 from fish, flaxseed, walnuts. It also needs from olive oil, from avocados, and even some saturated fats, which we could get from coconut or from animals. What we don't want is processed fats, margarine, and commercially prepared salad dressings and baked goods and other things that are high in fat. Protein is required for all cells of the body, and that includes the brain. High quality proteins include poultry, fish, eggs, pork, beef, and soy. Foods high in protein also provide B vitamins, choline, and iron. Vitamins essential for the brain include vitamin D. We can make our own vitamin D when sun hits our skin, but after the age of 65, we lose that ability. So everybody over 65 should be supplementing with somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 international units daily. The dose depends on our body weight. The more fat we carry on our body, the higher the dose of vitamin D that we require. Other vitamins essential for the brain are vitamins E and C. Both of these are actually antioxidants as well as vitamins. We get vitamin E from asparagus, avocado, olives, seeds, spinach, and we get vitamin C from peppers, citrus, tomato, strawberries, and spinach. Our brain needs several minerals, including zinc, that we get from eating oysters, beef, crab, pumpkin seeds, shrimp, and fish. We also need magnesium from seeds, nuts, legumes, and spinach. And research is showing that our food supply really is almost deficient in magnesium and selenium. So these are two minerals that we need to really consider getting in some form or another, like really deliberately eating these foods or supplementing with them. Now, selenium, we're not getting much in our diet, but we can do this easily with Brazil nuts. So maybe we can't get enough selenium from our vegetables because of the soil content, but Brazil nuts will do it. Brazil nuts are extremely high in selenium. All you need is between 2 and 4 Brazil nuts every day, and you're getting as much as you need. If you're eating Brazil nuts and you start to smell or taste garlic without eating garlic, that means that your tissues have been completely quenched with selenium, and you need any more. So you've reached the max. So if you're eating 2 to 4 a day, you might have cut back down to 1 to 2 Brazil nuts a day. Brazil nuts also provide us with copper, which is essential. But we can also get copper from beef, cocoa, and black pepper. And brain needs antioxidants. And we've mentioned this several times already. Antioxidants are needed for detoxification as well as protecting our cells, including the brain. We need to protect our brain. We get antioxidants from colorful vegetables and fruit. Herbs and spices are also really important. Turmeric stays in our gut and helps our microbiome, which is great. We need that. And curcumin is absorbed, and it has a positive impact on body tissues. So turmeric is the spice. Curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. And what we find in the research is that curcumin is very hard for our bodies to take away from the turmeric and to utilize. So usually with turmeric, with black pepper, makes the curcumin cleave away from the turmeric a little bit better and is better absorbed. We also need flavonoids like cocoa, tea, and citrus. Intermittent fasting gives the body a rest from digesting and metabolizing nutrients. This is really, really important to regenerate all the cells of the body. It resets our immune system and it strengthens our microbiome. It allows the body time to repair, and that includes the brain. Fasting for a few days or more, that's not what we're talking about. It's not what we recommend. But a 12 to 18 fast overnight is extremely beneficial. Just think of this as not eating before you go to bed. Eat your last meal of the day. Don't eat in the evening until the next day. If you don't like breakfast and it's just a chore to eat it, don't eat it. Extend your intermittent fast. It's actually really good for your health. So this whole thing about breakfast is the most important meal of the day, we've kind of abandoned ourselves from that. You know, if you don't want to eat till 10 o'clock in the morning or till noon, that's fine. It's a good fast. It's a good intermittent fast. Your body's going to, your tissues are going to regenerate and your brain is going to regenerate. Let's talk about the Mediterranean diet, which is the most researched diet type and currently the one we recommend for good health. Canada's food guide right now is based on the Mediterranean diet. A Mediterranean diet type called the MIND diet, M-I-N-D, has been shown to be effective for regenerating the brain. It's been used a lot in the research with Alzheimer's disease. It all started with Hippocrates, who lived on the Greek island of Kos in about 400 BC. He is considered the father of medicine and coined the phrases, "Let food be thy medicine," and "all diseases begin in the gut." We've known this for an incredibly long time. He started that first nutrition trend, the Mediterranean diet. What we must remember is that we don't live in the Mediterranean. There might be more to these health outcomes for people living in the Mediterranean than just the food that they eat. So let's start with comparing the Mediterranean diet versus the Canadian diet. Mediterraneans have preserved many of their traditional ways. I spend almost every vacation I have in the Mediterranean. I find it absolutely fascinating. I was in Crete, and a salad in Crete is just whatever edible weeds were gathered that day. And there's just nothing wrong with that, right? They have preserved their traditional ways. We tend to eat processed and fast foods. Europe doesn't allow genetically modified foods, pesticides, or herbicides. We genetically modify foods and use pesticides and herbicides to increase the yield of grains, particularly wheat. Most of their food is grown locally and consumed in season. We eat foods out of season that must be imported and transported. We can't grow food very well in the winter, right? We don't have a choice. Livestock is allowed to live their natural lives, grazing in the fields, with chickens roaming the gardens, eating the bugs and the weeds. They don't use pesticides and herbicides. They use their natural environment, like chickens, like geckos. We mass produce our livestock. We keep them in small spaces, and then they can get diseased, like the bird flu that's going around right now. They had to destroy so many chickens. They're kept in really small areas, and they're just bound to get disease. And a lot of times they'll give them antibiotics, but when they're giving their animals antibiotics, we're consuming that. So, this is not optimal. People in the Mediterranean eat from the land and their gardens. Every yard has some form of garden. If there's only a deck, they're growing food on the deck. They eat edible weeds, like I said. They love herbs. They grow herbs. For us, home gardens are not the norm. Mediterraneans live longer without disease, not only because of diet, but also because lifestyle habits that reduce stress. Stress kills. I mean, it's almost as important as food. They have nice weather and free time is spent outside. Their lifestyle is more active, just doing the day-to-day activities, like they have to tend their garden and their goats and their chickens, and they walk to the market. They're naturally just more active. They protect their downtime, and they engage in leisure activity every single day. Keeping traditional ways results in less stress related to daily living. Television is not a pastime for them. Being outside with people and socializing is how they spend their free time. This is what we need to consider if we want the benefits of a Mediterranean diet in Canada. We need a whole food diet, limiting processed food. That is anything that comes in a box, a package, or a can. We need to try to avoid those. Focus on colorful vegetables with lots of variety. Not too much fruit. This is actually a source of sugar, and sugar feeds the bad bacteria, which damages the gut and increases inflammation. But things like berries are very, very beneficial. High quality proteins with a variety of lean meat, chicken, fish, seafood, and organic soy. Limit processed meats like bacon, salami, and bologna. Animals store toxins in their fat, just like we do, so we want to consume either organic or lean meats. We need high quality fats like omega-3, olive oil, some organic animal fat, even coconut oil, because these are the building blocks for the brain. But what we need to stay away from are things like that are processed fats like margarine, Miracle Whip, salad dressings, that type of thing. Limit grains as they are genetically modified so that pesticides and herbicides can be used on the fields without killing the grains. So we need to, as Canadians, we eat a lot of grain. Well, we produce it, so it makes sense, but it can be toxic at high levels. So we need to focus more on the vegetables and less on the grains, and maybe even less on dairy. We need to limit our dairy because of how cows are raised will influence their milk. When cows are raised in tight quarters, they need antibiotics, and they're generally fed a feed or pellets, which is not their natural diet, and that can cause some toxicity. Mammals concentrate toxins in their milk and their fat, and there's evidence to show that consuming 200 grams or 3/4 cup of milk daily increases the risk of developing PD by 17%. One of the reasons we should avoid processed foods is the additives. Additives and preservatives can be toxic and have a negative effect on the microbiome. They can cause intestinal inflammation, which leads to inflammatory bowel disease and cancers. Emulsifiers and thickeners such as locust bean, agar gum, carrageenan, maltodextrin, and polysorbate are used to stabilize and improve the texture of processed foods. Glutamate changes the microbiome that causes inflammation and high blood pressure and increases body fat. It is found in monosodium glutamate, MSG. Meat tenderizers are often just monosodium glutamate. It's also a flavor enhancer, and we can see it in condiments, soups, chips, spices, restaurant, and fast food. Some people react very badly to MSG, especially people with high blood pressure. Food colors affect the microbiome and the brain. It can cause ADHD. If people that know it's attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, that's a disorder of the brain. It's been directly linked with food colors. Foods that are often colored are margarines, jello, jams, baked goods, cheese dips, dried fruit, condiments, salad dressings, and marinades. Sulfites have a negative effect on the microbiome, causing inflammation. And we use sulfites to dry our fruit. We use it in bacon, like preservative. We use it in beer, cider, wine, apple cider, canned fruit and vegetables, again, canned, condiments, deli meats, and snack foods. When sulfites are found naturally in food, they don't have a negative effect, unless for those people who are very sensitive to sulfites, even if they're found naturally in food. Some additives have a positive effect on health, like essential oils, thyme, cinnamon, citric acid. They're antibacterial, and they can also they often have a positive impact on our microbiome. Polydextrose acts like a prebiotic, so that's food for our good part of the good intestine, and therefore has a positive effect on our gut. It can also reduce constipation because it has a laxative effect. If you ever find a medication that's causing diarrhea, it might be because the filler is polydextrose. And polydextrose also increases the absorption of calcium and iron. Lifestyle is also important. Get outside most days, particularly in nature. The Japanese have been studying Shinrin-yoku, which means forced bathing, and they have found that being in nature reduces stress, improves immunity, blood pressure, the nervous system, and the mood. So the study they did was you can either walk around the block, sort of, in amongst traffic and cars and things, and they measure your blood pressure. And then they take you into nature and do the same route or the same amount of time, and they measure your blood pressure. And what they found is that when we're in nature, our stress levels and our blood pressure comes down much more than if we're walking on the sidewalk in the city. So being in nature, doing physical activity is a very good thing to do. And there's a whole boatload of research on physical activity and PD and the positive effects. So make sure that you are boxing, dancing. The beauty about dancing is that your brain, so we're regenerating the brain with food, but we also have to make the brain work physically. And the brain will work physically when you're learning something like dancing, because dancing moves the body and the brain has to be working and learning in order to move the body. So those two things in unison are very, very, very good for Parkinson's disease. Be social. It's good for your heart. Have protected downtime. Say no to commitments that do not bring you joy. There's just no place in our life for them. They cause stress and they take away our time. Sleep is vital for healing the brain. It also allows for our dopamine to build up. So, with Parkinson's, you're not building up your dopamine very fast, or you're not developing it you're not producing it. And so you're using it all day long. But when you're sleeping, you're not using your dopamine. So when you sleep, it can build up. And that's why sometimes people with PD, when they have an afternoon nap, if they have to go somewhere in the afternoon, if they have to sleep before they go, they function much better. Melatonin is a very effective sleep aid. It is also an antioxidant. Melatonin can reduce rotational behavior. That is the tendency to lean or favor to one side. But the doses are extremely high, 10 to 30 milligrams per kilogram of body weight for 19 days. That's a lot, considering that when we use melatonin to go to sleep, we use 5 to 10 milligrams. So, a high dose like that might be utilized by physicians or naturopaths, but it really needs some supervision. But it's definitely a therapy to consider. But regardless, melatonin is very effective for sleep. So if you're having problems with sleeping, find help, and melatonin might be one of those things. One thing I want you to remember is that when you sleep, between 10 and 2 is when your body repairs. Between 2 and 6 is when your brain repairs. So people who are waking up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they're robbing their brain time for repair. So if people, what I recommend for people like that is if you wake up at 2 o'clock, take melatonin, because you need those 4 hours sleep to repair the brain. Glucose is the enemy of the brain. In North America, we consume far, far too many carbohydrates: sugar, dairy, grains, fruit, potato, and corn. Potato and corn and many of our fruits are genetically modified, as well as being high in carbohydrate, which are converted into glucose or sugar. When consumed in excess, we get a high glucose load, which may be really hard on the brain, especially if the blood-brain barrier has been damaged. This does not mean you have to be keto, but less than 100 grams of carbohydrate daily is effective. Although there is a whole body of research on that the researching right now, they haven't published on the benefits of keto for Parkinson's disease. So we'll probably see that in the next year or so. But this is what a diet that has less than 100 grams of carbohydrate looks like. It's mostly vegetables with high quality proteins and fats, like avocado, for instance, some fruit like berries, plant-based yogurts, a few nuts, and a really, really small amount of grains and dairy. As a matter of fact, you can't even see it on this example. Sugar substitutes include those that you add to food and those that are already in food, like diet pop, desserts, and candy. And sugar substitutes alter the microbiome in a negative way. This bar graph shows that people who do not consume artificial sweeteners have a wider variety of microbes and a more balanced and healthier microbiome. Stevia is a low-calorie sweetener that might be beneficial for some people, as guess what? Increases the lactobacillus and the bifidobacterium, and the Akkermansia, which is great, except if you have Parkinson's disease. Remember, those are the ones that are already too high. So if you have Parkinson's disease, no sugar substitutes, including stevia. Taking levodopa can impact nutrition, and nutrition can impact levodopa. Constipation disrupts the microbiome, resulting in the conversion of levodopa to dopamine in the gut rather than the brain. We don't want this. In turn, levodopa can change the microbiome. Protein is broken down into amino acids which compete with levodopa for absorption in the gut. Therefore, it is recommended to take levodopa either 30 minutes before you eat or 1 to 2 hours after. Protein slows down stomach emptying, which can affect levodopa absorption. For those taking multiple doses, consuming adequate protein becomes difficult, which can lead to muscle wasting and malnutrition. Very complicated. But this nice doctor, Jonathan Squires, maybe some of you have met him. You can find him at the Parkinson's Foundation Center of Excellence at UBC. He has all kinds of alternative ideas for managing Parkinson's. And one of the things that I think this is what he's doing anyway, he's using infusions of levodopa under the skin, bypassing the gut. Because the big problem with levodopa is the gut. So if you can bypass it, you could do so much better with this medication. Is organic worth it? Researchers conducted a study with 23 children living in a private school in the agricultural area of Yakima in Washington state. They measured the toxins in the children's urine while consuming their usual diet and found that pesticides and herbicides, which damage the nervous system, including the brain, they found that in the urine of these children. Well, guess what? We get a lot of our vegetables from Yakima. Then for a week, they consumed only organic food, and they tested it to make sure that it actually was organic. They removed all their toxic cleaning supplies and all their toxic personal care products. And when they tested the urine again, they did not detect any pesticides and herbicides, and that outcome was statistically significant. So what we mean by statistically significant in research is that we are extremely confident that this was a result that was true. So yes, organic is worth it, but we also have to consider time and money in that equation. Jo Robinson is a horticulturist and a journalist with a research garden in Washington state, and this is her book. This is an excellent read. She scours food science journals for the most nutrient-dense variety of foods and tests them growing in her growing zone, I think, which is one of the islands in Washington state, which is the same growing zone as we have. So what she's found out, if you're a gardener, we can definitely benefit from. In her book, she provides good tips, such as blueberries have more nutrients after freezing, and garlic has more nutrients when crushed and allowed to sit for 15 minutes before cooking. And she'll actually tell you what the science says about this. So this is all rooted in science. And she explains how it's possible and gives you all kinds of good gardening tips. She also has YouTube videos, and one of her YouTube videos is about an hour long. She's speaking at a conference, and she's giving sort of the overview of this book. But still, the book had even far more than what that 1 hour lecture had, but worth watching and worth reading the book for sure. Reducing toxic exposures is not just about food, it's also our environment. These books are written by 2 Canadian environmental researchers. They show us where the toxins are in our environment and how to avoid them. These books are written so that we, the public, understand and can apply the information. They're very well written. At times, they're actually quite hilarious, it's such a serious topic. And yet I found myself giggling a lot. These guys are really funny. You can find YouTube videos that will introduce these researchers, and they will give you an idea about what they're trying to achieve. I will leave you with this message. We will never be able to be fully toxic free. It's in our environment. But if we support the liver and reduce toxic exposures where we can, we will be able to detoxify and eliminate those toxins that we can't avoid. And if you need to get a hold of me, that's how you can do it.